What's up, everybody? Jason Swenk here. Got an amazing guest, and we're going to talk about customer success and really making sure you're onboarding, taking care of your customers, you're growing your accounts. I'm real excited. This guy's been in the industry for a long time talking about customer success. So let's go ahead and get into the show. Hey, Nils, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Jason. Wonderful to be here. Excited to be on with you.
Yeah. So briefly, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, Jason. So 10 years ago, I finally found where I fit in the professional world, and that was a wonderful role, customer success manager. I was on the front lines working for a B2B SaaS business in the heart of San Francisco when the industry of customer success was just coming into existence. It hadn't really been around very long. It was a close follow-on from once the SaaS model was introduced, and thankfully Salesforce to say thank you to for introducing both the SaaS model as well as the customer success world. Once I fell into that role, it was like everything started to make sense for me. I knew how to use all these random skill sets I had acquired in the previous 10 years of my profession, from everything from trying to be a software engineer, which I was terrible at, to being a Xerox sales rep and going door to door selling copiers. So this wide, diverse skill set finally came into use, and I knew exactly how to serve the customer because I had had all these interesting little detours along the way. So customer success near and dear to my heart. I've been a consultant for the last 7 years. The fun fact is I started the very first customer success consulting firm ever in the world, January 1st, 2015, and have been working with all stage of companies, early stage, growth stage, scale stage, up to Fortune 100 companies to help them build world-class customer success organizations. I'm also a leadership coach and incorporate the leadership side into everything that I do. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about customer success. I have an agency that has been trying to help us out for marketing and has I've been views just from communication, all kinds of onboarding and just stuff, right? Like I'm just like
Yep.
this ain't gonna work out. So let's talk about what are the things. How can we make our customer success better? Some things that you've learned over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I boil this down into 5 things. Say your customer strategy must. I'm using the term customer strategy, which is a little bit broader than just customer, because sometimes customer success gets lumped in this one team inside of an agency or inside of, and they're the ones responsible for the success. And it couldn't be further from the truth. You know this. It takes a village to raise an incredible customer and to serve a customer. There is one team responsible. And when I ask owners and executives this question, I say, well, you have a marketing strategy, you have a sales strategy, you have a product strategy. What's your customer strategy? And I oftentimes get a lot of blank stares. I get oh, well, we do things great in the first 30 days and then, it quickly drifts off from there. So that's why I use this. There are 5 things that would walk with you through, get your feedback and thoughts on this, and maybe compare it to the experience that you're going through right now.
Go
Okay.
for it.
The first one is called the element of being prescriptive. So this is the underpinning of everything and is part psychology and part tactics. Let me ask you this question, Jason. Let's say that you wanted to enter a legal agreement with another party to do some kind of business deal. And you talked to your friends, said, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. I'd like to get some referrals to some lawyers so I can have a conversation about this. You get referred to 2 highly qualified lawyers. And you share your situation with each one, and here's how they respond. Lawyer 1 says, oh, yeah, I've done contracts just like that for that kind of situation. What do you covered in the contract? Reasonable, right? Response from a lawyer. Again, just first initial consultation. Same setup. Here's how lawyer 2 responds. Lawyer says, hey, Jason, yeah, I've built contracts exactly like you're just describing. In my experience, there are 5 things you absolutely 100% must cover. There's another 2 or 3 that I think might be applicable to. What I recommend is that we 5 things so you understand them. Then I'll give you my perspective on the other 2 or 3 things, and we can make a decision on what is going to be best for you. Agreement. How does that sound? Now, Jason, just based on that alone, which lawyer would you hire?
Number 2.
Yeah. Why? Why would you hire number 2?
Because they offered more, they were more of a trusted advisor rather than an order taker.
That's right. That's right. And this is the underpinning, or this is what shows up when companies and services are not. You end up looking like lawyer number one. If you ever get on a kickoff call with a new client and say, what do you want to do? You missed the mark, right? Because somebody just signed up and paid you perhaps 10, 20, 50, 100, $200,000. If you ask them, what do you want to do? They're going to pull their hair out and say, I just paid you $100,000 to do aiming for this. So that element of being prescriptive is so important, and that is why it is point number one. Now, point number two is what's called transformation. Now, nobody buys a service or a software or anything expecting some kind of transformation. You are here at one place and you're going to go in, you want to get to another place, whatever that is. Across the board, this is very general in application. However, if you think of your customers that you serve at an agency level, there's a transformation that they go through. And it is up to you to define what is going to be the absolute best transformation for your customer before they ever go through your process. So what I mean is that if we look at the end state that we want to get our customer to, and I was to ask you, and I'm sure you could probably tell me this, what are characteristics of the most successful customers that you work with? You could probably give me a short list. And I'd ask you, well, Jason, if you were to put yourself in the seat of your customer who signs up to use your service, and you knew everything about your agency, what would you do over the course of a year you got the most amount of value out of that? You could probably give me a pretty answer. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay, so with those two lenses, now we can look at that is the destination for where we have to get our customers to, because we come up with a finite list of just like a checkbox list that they have to do, where get to that point and we check all these things and the customers achieve those objectives, then they are in the absolute highest likelihood of renewing and expanding this with us. So that is the element of the transformation and the second major piece of the framework.
Love it.
We good to move on to number three?
Yeah, I love it. I love, just to kind of recap, just so you guys are following along, be that trusted advisor right from the very beginning, and then figure out where do they want, what do they want to become, especially when, people are using agency, really want to, like if you hire a Facebook agency, for example, well, you want leads. Well, why do you want leads? And you got to constantly think about what's the end result. If they get more leads, what happens? Oh, they'll be able to pick and choose their clients so they don't have to work with assholes anymore. Okay, that's a good transformation. If I don't have to work with assholes, then, I can have more freedom in my business. That's the ultimate transformation.
That's right. And the more you know about that end state and having clear definition what that transformation means for your clients, the more prescriptive you can be throughout their entire experience. It's like the old saying, like you begin with the end in mind, right? Just begin where you want them to end up. And when you do that, then everything else becomes infinitely easier. So once we know the end state, and think of this like visually as there's a timeline continuum that you're working with a customer, whether it's 6, 12, 18, 24 months, doesn't matter. But this transformation is this giant red target that you're working toward. Check boxes across that target, you're going to get them to the state where they have the highest likelihood, again, getting tremendous value out of your solution, but also renewing and expanding their business with you, which is what we're all after. So once we know the end state, then we got to go back to the beginning. And part number 3 of the framework is called the fresh start. And this is where most people spend the vast majority of time, and it's totally fine. There are key things we have to do here. So this encompasses as soon as the client signs up, that immediate first period, whether it's 30, 60 days, some people call this onboarding, implementation, whatever. I call it fresh start for a very specific reason. Number 1, the openness, willingness, enthusiasm, and ability to get things done will never be higher than at that moment when they sign up. So we have to capture that excitement, capture that enthusiasm, take full advantage of that, and give them reassurance that we know what we're going to do. This is why we don't show up and say, what do you want to do next? We say, here's what we're going to do next, to be that prescriptive element bringing in from part number 1. Now, in the fresh start, what we had to do, number 1, capture the energy, enthusiasm, excitement. Number 2, we have to set expectations for what's going to right now in the immediate time. How are we going to get all the background on this client's previous advertising experience, all their language that they use, all that good stuff. Like how to onboard them into our system. Okay, that's part number 2. Part number 3, and this is where most people fall down, whether it's in agency or in SaaS, you're probably experiencing right now, is you have to set expectations for how you are going to continuously engage and drive value for that customer over time. It's not just about getting through the project plan that is the first 30 or 60 days. That's important, but it's about what happens next. Because if you set expectations really there for what's coming down the line, then when you get to that point, post-implementation, kind of onboarding, all you're doing is fulfilling the expectations you already set. And it makes it infinitely easier to stay engaged and to make sure that you are delivering value.
Love it. I love it.
All right. So let's go on to part number 4, which is called the engaging middle. So post onboarding, post the fresh start, we can what can sometimes look like a black hole. And this is especially prevalent in the SaaS world. It is also in the agency world, and it's where we go through the heart of getting all the intense stuff happens up front. Then we get into this kind of like rinse and repeat cycle. And it's a rhythm which is important. However, there's a massive opportunity that we have to continue to add value to the customer over time. We have to come to the table with recommendations on how to improve, on what to change, on things they should consider. Otherwise, you sit there in the seat like you were just describing, where you're saying, why am I paying you this money if I'm the one directing you and telling you what to do? This is nothing more than a glorified VA service. And that's not what we want from an agency perspective, or from that would be, at the very bottom of the list. So in this engaging middle, there are lots of different ways to do this and lots of mechanisms, but we have to script what it is we are going to do. And if we know that before we actually engage with customers in that place, then we can decide what their experience is long before they ever have it. And that makes all the difference. If that agency you were working with had a very prescriptive approach for what's going to happen next and next month and next month and next month, and they always were coming to you with ideas, you probably wouldn't be in this position where you're sitting there questioning whether or not to renew. Am I right?
Totally right. And even if your agency is offering amazing results, because I hear one where they're like, man, I was blindsided by this client. We were getting amazing results to them and they left. Well, I was like, well, you didn't communicate well. They don't understand the plan. They just think you're coasting. That's why you got to go through all these steps. And I love what you said in the very beginning about, what's your customer success strategy? Mm-hmm. And that's a question we ask when we join our mastermind is like, what's the success you get for your clients? Like, you should think you are the best in your industry. Literally, you should be cocky about that. If you're not, well, then why the hell are you doing it?
Right. That's right. And the best part is that everybody knows, or let's say can identify what their customers stress. And that's why I include these 5 things. Because if you answer each one of these in very detailed format, boom, there's your customer strategy. It's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be a massive complex thing. You go off in a cave for 48 hours and try to figure it out. No, you just follow the steps. But you have to hit all 5 of these things, because if you don't, then leave an opportunity and leave an engagement and having customers leave on you, just like you described.
It's nuts. And sometimes, look, you're going to have customers are going to leave you regardless.
Yes.
And a lot of times I always tell the agencies, like, well, good, you can upgrade. Like, some customers are just going to leave, and that's a good thing. And you should keep elevating yourself and your business each time. When I looked at our agency and we lost a client that was for 5 years, I'm like, well, crap, man, we never raised the prices as much for them versus the new ones coming in. Like, literally, we could get, one client would pay for almost years of what they were paying us for. So,
right, that's right, and that opportunity is right. So I can totally appreciate that. And this is the same thing in whether you're in agency world and SaaS world. Customer churn is going to happen, as you said, and it's okay. Right. The key is you have to know when it's going to happen. It's the surprises that kill you, right? It's the all of a sudden that client disappeared and I thought they were in great shape and they loved us. That's a bad place to be. Whether you're managing $1 million account or a $50,000 account or a $10,000 account, surprise is not fun. It is not what we're after. And when you have a strategy in place for your customers, then you can know how far on track or off track your customers are. And that can give you very good leading indicators about how successful they're going to be and how likely they are to renew, because it's the renewal and the expansion that's the game.
Yeah, one of the things that, I tell our mastermind all the time, because that was one of the questions I asked last month is, what's your rate for your clients? And some people didn't. And then I started asking them, well, what are you doing, in order to fix this? Or and one of the things that we've always done is we'll create like a Trello board and we'll have red, yellow, green, and we'll put our clients in there. So if they're red, these are the ones we're talking about. These are the ones in danger. How can we show results? How can we communicate better to them? They haven't shown up for meetings, whatever it is. Yellow, everyone comes in at yellow, right? And because they're still trying to decide, because I had Joey Coleman on the show and he spoke to our mastermind too at our agency experience. And he said something really interesting. He goes, if you can improve your customer retention by 5%, that could almost double your business. And your customers, when they sign with you, like you were saying, most excited, but then it goes down from there. And rather than just ringing the bell, what can you do? How many touch points? How can you over communicate to literally chat too much to them?
Yeah. Rather be over communicated with than under communicated with, because here's what happens when you under communicate. You might assume that by not, overloading them, they're busy. Oh, I'm staying out of their way, blah, blah. I'm just giving them stuff. But the reality is, as soon as there is a vacuum of information where there is not an answer to something or service, all of the experience you're going through right now, the first thought that comes into your mind and your client's mind is going to be negative and is going to be based around assumption that you're not doing what you were supposed to do and that you have to keep track. Client has to keep track of you. It is human nature. It's human psychology to focus on the negative. For whatever reason, we go straight to the negative. It's like when somebody doesn't return an email within the time frame you think they're going to, or what do? The first thing you say is, do wrong. Maybe I wrote that incorrectly. Maybe it was something I did. There's something wrong. Something must be wrong. And then they get back and say, sorry, my kid just had COVID. It had nothing to do with you. But the reality is that's the first place our mind goes to is the negative. And your customers 100% are thinking that if you are not in the communication and if you are not going through a prescriptive experience and delivering that to them. 100%.
I love it. And kind of switching focus a little bit, before we wrap up the show, let's talk a little bit about leadership, becoming a better leader, within the agency, because I find a lot of agencies, we start by we're accidental. Yep. And we operate for many, many, many years, maybe even to the end, as an owner rather than really kind of like a CEO. So what are some suggestions or recommendations? Because I'm always looking to be a better leader. I don't think anybody's ever always figured out they can always become better. So what are some suggestions you have?
So I'll give you the high level overview of the framework that I created to the big world of leadership down into bite-sized chunks. And then I'll give you one specific tool that you and this audience can put in place and is most powerful and one of the most important, the things that people want the most. And I'll give that to you and the listeners here. So first up, framework. In my view, there are 4 pillars of leadership. These are leading yourself, leading others, leading with communication, and leading with metrics. When thinking of the complex world of leadership, we cannot stay at that high level. I can't just say I want to become a better leader and pick up a random tidbit from here or there, a podcast or something else, and expect long results, right? We have to take long-term view, just like you do as an agency CEO. We have to take that long-term view and apply it in the same way to develop our leadership skills. So each of those pillars, yourself is all about you and your psychology. Leading others is all about the interactions, engagements you have with your team, the immediate people within you. Leading with communication is all about tools and techniques, your message outside of the immediate people that you work with. This includes externally to your clients as well. And then leading with metrics kind of pulls it all together and shows how we measure things to completely improve. So the one tip and tool I share with you is that around giving feedback. And this, people might say, oh, feedback, I've this before. This is a generic one. However, here's Harvard Business Review did a study recently, and they found that the number one thing that wanted was to receive negative feedback, to be basically to learn how to get better. Conceptually makes total sense. I would appreciate that too. However, the number one thing that tried to avoid was giving negative feedback. So the very thing that people most, every employee in your agency guaranteed 100% wants this most, is feedback to help them grow. However, the leaders in the organization, one thing they typically try to avoid is giving negative feedback because it's uncomfortable, because they don't have a system. So I've got a simple 3-step process that you can implement right away through it. Step number 1, here's what I observe. And this is the word for word language for exactly how to use this. So here's what I observed. Now, when you fill in the blank of here's what I observed, this has to be objective, very, very, very specific. Here's what I observed. In our client meeting on Tuesday afternoon, you said, quote, and the exact words that were there, right? In this situation with this particular client, this was the action that I observed. So this is not a place for you always. This is not a place for generalities. This is the specific fact that is irrefutable because it actually happened. No interpretation here. Okay, so that's step number 1. Here's what I observed. Step number 2, the impact that had is, so now we're talking about impact. So this is your interpretation of the impact that that action had. So in the meeting with the client on Tuesday afternoon, you said this. The impact that had is that it positioned us in a way that was not authoritative, right? That's your interpretation of what the impact was it had. Now, step number 3 is the twist, and where most people probably get this wrong. And that is simply ask the question, help me understand what's on. The reason for this is lots of leaders can feel like if they're in the position of authority, they should be telling the other individuals what to do. The reality is we have no idea where someone else is coming from. So instead, if you lay out the objective section, you share what the impact was, person who did it probably had no idea about, then you ask the question, help me understand what's going on. You're inviting them to share their side of the story you will never get on your own. And that's why it is so incredibly powerful, because you ask that question, they might respond with something like, my gosh, I had no idea that I even said that came across that way. I had no, the impact of what I said actually was that. The action that I took was this. Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. I absolutely 100% can correct this. Now, most times when delivered in this way, that's a lot of the feedback that you will receive. But if we stopped it at step number 2 and just said impact and said, go fix it, we would never invite them into the conversation. They would never grow. So it's a simple 3-step system. Here's what I observed. Here's the impact it had. Help me understand what's going on.
Yeah, I really like that because it gets you to understand their position. A lot of people, and I agree, a lot of leaders or managers, let's call them managers, they just go, hey, I don't like how you did it there. Do it this way. And
That's right.
It's almost kind of like I tell people the wrong way to manage someone is to delegate tasks. You should delegate outcomes and then coach them, through, once you understand where they're coming from, kind of like what you're saying, and figure it out rather than jumping down their throat,
That's right.
I've had some really bad managers. I've had some good ones. But and I've also been fired from almost every single job I've ever had. So not the ideal.
You're in position for what you're doing today.
Can't fire myself. Just lack of options.
And that's the truth. Like this is an example. And the reason why I shared this tool, number 1, it's incredibly powerful. Anybody listening can put to action today, because I guarantee 100% whoever you work with, even if they don't technically report to you, wants to hear this feedback. They don't know what you see. They don't know the impact that it had. And guess what? It also works with clients. Client, what I observed is that you changed that delete and moved it up by 2 weeks. The impact that had is sent us into a frenzy, and we didn't feel like we could make you successful. Help me understand what's going on. Poof. Easy conversation to deliver versus sitting there worrying about, am I going to make this client angry if I say that they changed the date? I'd say how high when they say jump. No, you have a stake in this, you have a role in this, but you have to deliver that feedback in a meaningful way that is objective, that is not general. This is a framework to do it. And this is an example of how a simple tool like this can be integrated into your life. And as soon as you start giving feedback this way, you're going to improve the lives of the people with you and the people you give this feedback to. It's going to make their lives better. They will in turn, approach their job, approach their work, approach their life in a different way. Everybody becomes, a better as a result. That's ultimately what the impacting a better leader and having better leadership tools can do.
I love it. I love it. You have a book about this. Where can people go? And then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, you can get a free digital copy of my book. It's called 30-Day Leadership, Your Guide to Becoming the Leader You Have Always Wanted to Be. All you need to do is go to 30-Day Leadership. That's 30leadership.com/book. Drop in your email, send it to you right away, and look forward to you getting your hands on tools, just powerful feedback formula we've done today.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Nils, for coming on the show. Make sure all of you go get that free copy of the book. And if you guys want to be around amazing agency owners and really understand more frameworks, more strategies, make sure your retention goes up. Make sure you actually sell more things that you're not able to see. I'd like to go check out our Digital Agency Elite Mastermind. Go to digitalagencyelite.com. And until next time, have a swank day.